Welcome to Lecture 5 of the Production Possibility Curve / Production Possibility Model lectures. In this lecture, we're going to review some of the basic principles about the Production Possibility Model, about the Production Possibility Curve, and then focus on economic growth. Our original Production Possibility Curve is represented by the curve just outside the yellow area. All right, and our potential economic growth is obviously represented by A prime, B prime, C prime, D prime, and E prime. So in a previous lecture, we asked the question, first, how does a society, how does an economy achieve economic growth? Well, there are basically three sources of economic growth. An increase in the quantity or quality of resources, so land, capital, labor, entrepreneurability. So for instance, Pennsylvania and other parts of the Northeast here have had an explosion of discovery of natural gas. So that natural gas could potentially catapult U.S. economic growth forward for the next 10 years once we decide how and where to employ that new economic resource. All right, so an increase in the quantity or quality of resources. The second potential source of economic growth is an increase in technology or an improvement in productivity / technology. And of course, these inventions and transformations and newfangled methods of doing any type of activity or performing any type of economic task, they're being discovered all the time. So in the future, we will have an improvement in technology. And we said in the previous lecture that about 2/3 of all economic growth is attributed to improvements in technology / productivity. The third potential source of economic growth is through specialization. The United States specializes its economic resources and engages in international trade. This is a topic that's covered sometimes in a macro class, but sometimes in a micro class. So right now we're just going to focus on the previous two, the change in resources and the improvement in technology. Well, knowing where economic growth comes from, we talked in a previous lecture about, does a society's choice today, does our allocatively efficient choice today have any impact on our economic growth going forward? So when we examined the production possibility frontier provided by McConnell, we said that the allocatively efficient point happened to be point C, 2 units of pizza / consumer good output and 7 units of capital good / industrial robots output. That was where the marginal benefits were equal to the marginal cost of producing and consuming both consumer goods and capital goods. Again, this is a normative decision. Two countries with relatively same population and economic resources and education level might somehow choose different points on their curve as allocatively efficient, right? So now we know where economic growth comes from. What about the choice today? Let's look at the next slide and talk about that. So here we have on the left-hand side an economy which favors present goods. In other words, if you look on the horizontal axis of both of these production possibility frontiers, goods for the present would represent consumer goods. So in our little world, it was the pizzas, right? And goods for the future represent capital goods. So let's call for sake of argument, the economy on the left-hand side favoring present goods, we'll call that economy A. And the economy on the right, for sake of argument, we'll call that economy B. So notice that they both start off with similar production possibility frontiers. So we could assume that they're blessed with about the same amount of economic resources. However, country A or economy A, they decide to allocate more of their resources today on their current production possibility frontier, right, towards more goods for the present, towards more consumer goods. Will they achieve economic growth going forward? Yes, they will, but let's compare their economic growth to country B or economy B on the right-hand side. Economy B, country B, they decide to allocate more of their scarce, limited economic resources towards capital good production, goods for the future. And that should make sense, goods for the future, because what's happening is when you're allocating more of your economic resources towards capital goods, you're really building up your country's infrastructure, your productive capacity, so to speak. So in theory, what would happen is that an economy who chooses, like country B on the right-hand side, who chooses a point further towards capital good production, further towards goods for the future, would enjoy a better economic growth going forward, or a more vigorous economic growth. Now remember, both countries will have economic growth. Both countries will experience economic growth. It's just a matter of the magnitude of economic growth. So the point of this slide, your choice today, an economy's choice today, a country's choice today, in theory does have impact on economic growth going forward.